Yeah, well, I think so far Bappebti has done a great job of regulating this industry.
Yeah.
It's a complex and tricky industry to understand. We think that Bappebti has done a really great job. We love working with them. Moving forward, as the transition will happen to moving on to OJK, we think that that's a big positive. You know, I think OJK has some different ways of regulating. Sometimes they can be a bit stricter, which overall we think is actually good for the industry. And I think the fact that first it was regulated by Bappebti and then it will be collaboratively regulated by OJK, I think is kind of the best of both worlds. So we're quite happy about it. We're quite excited. It will be more work for us because it's, you know, the work for our compliance team, there will be more that we have to do. But overall, we think this is good for the overall health of the industry, especially the local industry here. So we're quite optimistic, I would say, about the transition. Yeah, it's similar. It's a little bit, very slightly, a little bit older because Reku has been around for a long time, one of the oldest exchanges, and a lot of the users that we have been quite loyal users with Reku, and they've been around for a long time. So in terms of on average, we have a slightly older, slightly more experienced, more active type. But yeah, in general, it's the numbers are quite similar to what you're saying. Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I think earlier on, let's say maybe like 3-4 years ago, it was a lot of it primarily driven by FOMO, the fear of missing out, like you're saying. I think since then, though, a lot of companies, including Reku, has done a lot of work in terms of trying to improve the financial literacy of the average user. And so I think that there's also been a very significant increase in the literacy, which is driving a lot of the growth of users. For example, we're partnering with Tether, which is actually the company behind the highest volume crypto asset globally, called USDT. So we're partnering with them, and we're doing this big series around improving financial literacy around all these different cities in Indonesia. So things like that, we're spending a lot of time, and we're trying very hard to improve the literacy of Indonesians, and we believe it's working, and we believe that that's the big reason, one of the big reasons, why. So U.S. stock investing in Indonesia is still quite young. The U.S. stock investing market is much smaller than crypto, it's much smaller than Indo stock, much smaller than Reksadana, of course, in terms of volume. So we see it as quite early. We're still in the early game of providing this service. But the U.S. stock market, the industry as a whole, the asset class as a whole, is a super high quality asset class. Like, I personally, and we as a company, have a lot of conviction in that asset class. It's been very consistently returning, 10% over the last 100 years. It's a very good asset class. So we want to make sure that we, as Reku, are making it as easy and as comfortable for the user as possible to invest in that asset class, to get access to that investment class. And everything we do on the platform is around that. So for example, the minimum trading amount is just $1. So it's just making the bar as low as possible, making it as easy and most accessible to as many users as possible, because we believe that that asset class is so good, and we're still in Indonesia, it's still quite young, so we want to see it grow. So overall, that's kind of the thesis for us. I think between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, the Democratic candidate, Donald Trump had some more promises, especially in the short term, that would boost the industry, the economy in general, and specifically the stock market and crypto. So for example, on the crypto side, he promised that he would create a strategic fund, right, where the US government would start buying a lot of Bitcoin, for example. Now, the specific plans are not there yet, but that was his promise. And so when he got elected, of course, the price of Bitcoin went up because they're anticipating that positive news. So I believe that overall, Donald Trump will be positive for crypto, and generally in the short term, at least, will be positive for the US stock market. In terms of the long term, I think it's very hard to know, right? Because he doesn't have very clear policies yet. For example, he's talking about raising lowering the taxes. He's talking about putting in tariffs against different countries, right? Things like that. But the specific plan is not there yet, so we don't know for sure. But I think the market is reacting to a lot of the promise, the good promise. So a lot of near-term euphoria, like you said. In the long term, I believe it just comes down to if his policies are specific enough and they are helpful enough. I think right now it's a little hard to know in general. That's kind of what I would say. Yeah, you know, I try not to predict too much, but I would say, you know, in terms of the 100,000, we were like 0.1% away, right? I mean, the all-time high is 99.8 thousand, right? So I think it's just a matter of time. If you ask me, I believe it will happen probably soon, but it's not financial advice. I'm not, you know, I'm not here to try to predict prices of things. So, but I'm quite optimistic overall. So we have two high-level plans. One is we are still expanding our product. So like we expanded with the US stock product, in early next year we'll expand with the derivatives, crypto derivatives product. So it's another, so now we'll have kind of three big assets, crypto spot, US stock, and crypto derivatives, like that. So that's one. The second thing is, we still really want to focus on providing the best experience on our app to our users. And a lot of that is not very complicated. Sometimes it's just about providing the best service. So recently we've been focusing a lot more on making sure that our platform is the fastest exchange in Indo. So if you withdraw or you deposit or you do transaction, buy, sell, our platform most of the time is the fastest among all of our competitors. So just the basic kind of, you know, the basic level of service we're really prioritizing going forward as well as currently. So those are kind of the big things that we're continuing to work on. Yeah, I think that's something that we have more in the further out. In terms of the derivatives piece that you're talking about, it's a slightly different part. It's just the derivatives, so the ability to take positions on crypto assets that you don't own and then put leverage on it, blah, blah, blah. So the perpetual derivatives, that's the name of the product, slightly different than what you're saying. But what you're saying also, I think, will be developing in the future. Yeah. Yeah, I think that I think under OJK it will be more possible. I think currently it's a little unclear if that's possible or not, but I think with OJK it will probably have more potential to experiment and do something there. Possibly, we're not sure yet because we haven't started developing it, so we don't know yet, but I think the first step will be collaboration with regulators, and then after that, in terms of the different clients that we'll have, of course the asset managers will be there, but no, it's not something that we know for sure because we have not developed and there's no clear regulatory guideline yet. Yeah, so we have about 1 million registered users, and that's today. I think going into the future, we want to continue to grow well. In the last year or so, we've about tripled our top line revenue. So we've been growing very nicely. We're quite happy with how the progress of the business is going. And I think going forward, we want to continue that momentum. So I can't say a very specific number in terms of this is exactly how many users, but I just want to make sure that our growth momentum continues to be strong going forward. And I think we have a lot of positive reasons for that. Yeah. Yes, so for the year of 2022, we've been profitable, so we're quite happy with that. I think for us it's quite important, especially, we don't want to be dependent on, for example, venture capital funding, because that, as we've seen in 2023 and 2024, that environment can be somewhat unpredictable. So it's better to not depend on something that's unpredictable. So for us, profitability is important. We're very happy that we've achieved good profitability this year. And so, yeah, it's very important for us, and I think we will continue to prioritize it. And I think going forward, if we continue to grow the way that we have, then I think our financial position will only get stronger. So, yeah, we're quite optimistic. Like I mentioned before, I try not to give any kind of price predictions or my thoughts on that. In general, I believe that it's, for most people, it's starting earlier is better for two reasons. One is the earlier you start, of course, the more growth that you'll experience. But also, if you start, then by starting you will learn. Yes, you can try to read as much as you can before you start and whatever, but I think in general, people, they find themselves much more motivated to learn if they are actually already investing. So if you start early, it's the best way for you to become educated, for you to want to do research and to want to get better at this. So my opinion is always start early. It's hard to know if now is high or if it will continue going up or if it might go down. It's very hard to know. So instead of trying to predict that, better to just start early, be regular, and be disciplined about your investing style. And yeah, that's kind of my high-level advice. Yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah, it's very affordable. I mean, platform like Reku, like I mentioned, for US stock, as little as $1, 15, 16,000 rupiah. On the crypto side, as little as 5,000 rupiah. So it's you don't need a lot, just a little bit, but be consistent, be disciplined, and start early and little bit, and then I think that's the best way to have long-term success in investing. Very important. I think, if you ask me, I think it's very important. I think some people, it depends, yeah. Some people, if they are very passionate and they believe very much in one specific thing, then if they want to go bigger into that, then there's more risk, but there's also more upside, right? But I think for 99.9% of people, regular investors, I think diversification is very important because you cannot predict how the world is going to move. And that's something that we at Reku really care about, is giving our users access to a lot of diverse asset classes and things that they can invest in as well. So if you ask me personally, yes, I believe diversification is very important to control your risk. I would say for the near term, it's not something that we've thought about because Indonesia there's so much interesting promise. The market is still growing very fast. There's a lot we can do here, and our passion is serving this market. So in the near term, we've only thought about Indonesia. But I think further down, maybe like you said, 3 to 5 or so years later, maybe it depends. But for the short term, we're just thinking about Indonesia for now. I think it matters a huge amount. I think it maybe is one of the most important issues that we have in our industry today. How can we, as the industry, and how can regulators work together to protect the local industry? Because you're right, there is a lot of reasons why people are choosing to go send their money offshore.
Yeah.
And that's not, nobody wants that. We don't want that. And of course the regulators don't want that. But because of the way that certain rules are made, that's been the natural effect. So my hope would be that the industry and the regulators can work together to create the right plan to protect the local economy, because that is a win-win, and I don't believe that it's very hard. In fact, there's a lot of countries globally that have done a very good job of doing it, all in slightly different ways, and Indonesia needs to find its own way that works for it. But ideally, and my hope is that all of us will collaborate together and recognize that we all have the same goal, and we can all collaborate to protecting our local industry. That's my big hope.